Okay, hi everybody. This is the third in the series of these. No, it's the fourth in the series of four tutorials. Sorry, getting lost there a little bit. As promised, this is the deck and the umbrella table and chairs. And I think what I'm going to do is actually do the deck, just a review of that. That's pretty straightforward. And so in order to do that, I'm going to get rid of that circle for right now. And then once I do that, I will do the table, umbrella table and chairs, maybe as a separate tutorial to add into this. So there may end up being 5, but at least that will keep everything kind of connected to what the actual object is. Okay, so before I get started with the deck, there are a couple things that kind of came up in class today that I really wanted to go over. And actually, one of those is staring me in the face right here, and that's these labels. You don't need to keep these. I think I mentioned it. So if you see those, I put those on there so you knew which each of these quadrants were supposed to be as you modeled. But if you just click on it, select it, hit delete, that will disappear. And they're kind of 3D, so they do move around. They're not always in the same place, and that's misspelled too. So let's get rid of that. No one will know I made a typo. Okay, we can delete those. Now, another thing I want to do is, thing I want to mention, I'll get to this little cube right here in a second, but the other thing I want to mention is, and this kind of came up, I think, in class today too, these tutorials are here to help you. I'm happy to make them, but I do not want you to get the idea that this is the way to model something. First, this is the first point. It's not the way, it's a way to do that. There's 3 or 4 ways to model these things, and instead of trying to go through all 3 or 4 options and maybe more and confuse you, I picked one that I kind of felt like was the method that I would use. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. One of the things about teaching this software over the years, I have learned lots of new things. Every year I learn something new. And tomorrow somebody may show me a better way to do what I've demonstrated in one of these tutorials, and I will be the first one to shake their hand and say thank you, because at my age, I do not need to waste time. And you don't need to waste time either. So if there's a better way, use it. And if another faculty member in class says, well, I would do it this way, that's perfectly fine. I've learned a lot because someone else has said, well, yeah, that's a good way to do it, but did you ever think about using this? And I'm like, wow, that's way faster. So don't be afraid to entertain several ways of doing things and then get comfortable with your own modeling process and go from there. Okay, so I just want you to keep that in mind. Second point about the exercise or the assignment is, the point of this assignment is to help you start thinking about modeling process and how to use the tools in an effective way. This assignment is not, all caps, is not about making the objects that you're asked to make. So if your sidewalk goes a little different than mine, if your gazebo looks a little different, it's about accuracy, efficiency, connection, using surfaces, using 3D forms, but it's really about helping you learn the process of modeling. And that relates to the third point, and that is, I like putting these tutorials online, but I don't want you to just to memorize the steps that I go through, complete the form, the gazebo, the bench, the patio, and then forget about it, because if you do that, you're not going to learn how to use SketchUp properly. And I actually have some students, and I've had students in upper level classes, I realize they don't remember half of what they were taught in 251. Their modeling skills aren't very good, and you don't want to be there. These skills are really important to help you visualize what you do as a landscape architect, help you come up with design ideas in studio and represent and visualize those. So I don't want you to see this assignment as I need to model these things. As long as I get them modeled, everything's okay. It's really about learning the process. That's what this is about. Of course, you have to model something in order to do that. So hopefully as you look through the videos, I want you to think about the process, not just, okay, Professor Johnson did this, 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 and this in this order. If that's all you do, you're missing the entire point of what this assignment is for. So please think about what you're doing. Use the video to help you get it done efficiently, but pay attention to the steps and think about, why did he do that way? Why is that work? Why is that efficient? And if someone else shows you a better way, then you can understand, well, I see why he did it this way, but maybe this is better. Okay, last point before I start. Just wanted to illustrate this. I'm going to open the outliner. One thing I noticed in class today, we emphasized using groups, and that's really important. And I'm very happy to see that everybody is using groups. That's perfect. What I did see, however, as part of that is this. So if you look at the outliner, group, 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 group. Now, if these are all different parts of the geometry, that's awesome. But in this case, group, same shape. Group, same shape. Group, same shape. Okay, so I have three groups that really don't need to be there because the geometry is exactly the same. And I'm not getting any benefit by having that group. So if I had this, I would right click, explode, select, right click, explode, select, right click, explode. So now I have one group. So when I open this group, if there's only one piece of geometry in here, that's all you need. So nested hierarchical groups are really important, but nesting the same geometry 3 or 4 times as a group really just makes your job a whole lot more difficult. So that's one of those conceptual things that you need to think about and understand. Just because you keep making things into groups doesn't mean you're doing a good job. You have to use them wisely. You have to think about what's going on. So if, for example, I come in here, I draw a shape. This is something else that I want to be part of a subset of this. I right click, make group, double click, push, pull it up. Now this makes sense because now I have a new piece of geometry that's separate from this geometry, and it makes sense in the hierarchy of the group. But if it's just the same geometry grouped to itself 3 or 4 times, that's not really helping you. It really just makes things more complicated. So think about groups that way and make sure you understand how to use them. All right, enough of that. So let's take a look at the model. So the first thing I'm going to do to make this deck is actually get rid of this. The reason this is here is I created a rectangle and another rectangle just to create this shape. But if I delete that, now I have this shape. And as Kiki reminded me in class this morning, I need to double click and make this a group because that separates it from everything else around it. So let's go into that group. And because this is the main deck level, I am going to choose the push-pull tool, pull it up, type 2 feet, and enter. And you can use the measurement bar down here to pull it up, but if I know what it is, I'm just going to pull it up. So there's my main deck level. And again, my approach is let's make the main parts of the structure. Let's make that, get everything there, and then add the details. So I know everything fits together. And what we need here are some steps. We can't jump 2 feet into the air to get on the deck. So in order to do that, we can either take the horizontal lines and pull them out and then extrude them up, or we can take these horizontal lines, copy them down, and extrude them out. And actually, for me, I think it makes more sense to do it this way. Again, it's not the absolute way to do it. It's just the way I prefer it, makes sense in my mind. So I'm going to choose the Move tool. I know that this is 2 feet, so I'm going to break that up into 6-inch increments. So I move 6 inches. I'm just looking at the measurement readout here. Control click, move another 6 inches. Move another 6 inches. Okay, and I know I've done my job because when I click on these, each one is a separate surface. If for some reason you moved off that line and you see a thick line here, then undo it and do it over again because it's not going to work. Okay, so now that I've got these are my what's called risers. Steps have treads and risers. Treads are what you step on. Risers are the vertical part that you stub your toe on. So this first one here, I don't need to pull out into a tread because the deck is the tread. I step down onto this one. So I'm going to move down to the second level and I'm going to make these steps. This is just, you're going to learn next semester about riser tread ratios and a formula to help you determine the relationship between those two. But for right now, just take this for granted. I used a 6-inch riser and I'm using a 1-foot tread, okay? 1 foot right down here. Now, as you know, once you extrude something, you can double click to repeat that extrusion. And if you have something selected permanently, just hit the escape key to get rid of it. But if you move over it, this is okay if you hover. But if it's already selected, the escape key. So I'm going to double click to repeat that, double click again, double click, double click. I'm just repeating that same extrusion. So you can see here, 6 inches, 1 foot, 6 inches, 1 foot. Now here I'll do this 2 different ways. I can double click. Oopsies. Double click. Well, I messed that up, so now I have to fix it this way. So because I moved that a slight increment, I can't use the double click. So what I would do is what I was going to show on the other side. What I would do is just pull it out and snap it to here, then pull it out, 6, enter, and you've got that. And actually I need that a foot, so another 6, enter, and I've got 1 foot. So again, pull it out, snap it to the face, pull it out. Well, I typed 1 there, and guess what I got? 1 inch. So we have to remember the units. Undo, pull it out, 1 foot. You can see it down here in the measurements. Enter, and now I've got that pulled out to a foot. So I don't care if you do it that way or if you pull out. Let's just undo this. I'll show it the other way for those of you. So no, there's more than one way to do this. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. So that's done. Now let's go back to here and say, okay, let's do it the other way. We're going to select the bottom, and in this case, I can actually do an offset. And I can just go click 1 foot, click 2 foot, click 3 foot. Okay, so I need 3 treads, 4 risers. Now, in this case, this is another reason maybe to do it the other way. I don't know, just think about it. I did that, but I don't have surfaces, so I have to come in here and I have to draw a line from there to there. Now I have surfaces. And then I can take my push-pull. I can snap that to there, go down, 6, enter. Snap that to there, down, 6, enter. Snap that to there, down, 6, enter. So again, I ended up with the exact same result. Looks the same. The only kind of weird thing that's happened here, for whatever reason, you can see this surface is a different color. We just reverse faces. Right click, reverse faces. So they're all facing the same way. It just makes it a little better. Okay, and I don't know if you noticed before when I did this, I got extra lines on the tops because of these points here. And those lines you can just delete because you don't need them for the surface. In this case, I got an extra line right there. I delete that. So either way is perfectly acceptable. This way I had to draw another line, and over here I've got some extra lines I need to get rid of that I don't need because I don't want to see those in my deck. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you prefer to do it the first way, do it. If this makes more sense to you, the way you visualize things, then use it. It's 3D modeling in any software is really about understanding what works for you and how you visualize it. Learn to use the tools, and then adopt a process that works efficiently for you. It may not work for me, but it may work for you perfectly well. Okay, so basically with that, the deck is done with one exception. I think as I mentioned in class, most decks are not, they're not flush like this because it's, you step over and you hit your foot, and actually the way you build this, you would usually use a little overhang. Even interior steps have a little overhang. So because I haven't set this before, and you all probably have, I'm going to model info and units, and I'm going to set my snapping length to 1/2 inch. Okay, I don't know why it didn't take that. All right, well, let's just try 0.5. Okay. Guess I have to change this to 1/2 inch. My precision isn't high enough, so it's not going to work. So let's just click in there. Hopefully that will do it. So I'm going to make sure just to be sure. All right, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Again, if you set this up in your original model, you shouldn't have to do it. But since I'm starting over, I didn't have that set. So now I can get that 1/2 inch increment. So I'm going to zoom in on this, select these top two, sections and use the same process. Now, as I did vertically, pull that down with the control key. There's an 1.5 inches, push pull, 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to go through. Now, I just did it on this example. I just did it here. Probably, I really want that to go all the way around, right? If we're going to overhang it, we're going to do it everywhere so it's consistent. So I can use that method for the rest of the steps. But here, what I really need to do is do it all the way around. So instead of selecting all these lines, I'm going to double click, which selects the surface and the bounding edges, shift click on the surface, then use the move tool and the control key and move it down 1.5 inches. Then I get my push pull. Last thing I did was 1.5 inches, so I should be able to just double click on that. And I'm just working my way around the model, and you can see that it's giving me this. Now, if you're going to see this in a model, you can come in here and erase this. But for example, in this case, unless I'm taking a view where that's visible, leave it alone. Don't worry about it. Save yourself some time. This is all about what you're producing with this model, not about perfection in geometry. So we want it to be very clean, but there are certain things you can let go if they're not really helping you. Okay, so that looks great. It's going all the way around there. So now let's do the same thing on the rest of the steps. In this case, I'll just grab these two, control move, 1.5 inches. And you also notice, okay, double click, space bar to get select. One thing that you'll notice that I'm doing here, so to get my view straightened out, is when I go to move this, move tool, I'm not clicking randomly out here. I'm going to click right on this corner, hit the control key, and pull it down because I know I have to move it perfectly vertical. Now, out here, you can move it vertical. You get the blue axis. Everything's fine. But it's also possible to move it off that here. On the corner, it's impossible. If you move down this line, it's always going to be aligned. So use that as a reference point. Go to push-pull, double-click. It's done. Space bar to get the select tool, shift click, move, control. I'm going to use the corner, 1.5 inches, push pull, double click. Okay, so that just adds that little edge, 1.5 inches all the way around, and that's exactly the kind of detail we want on that deck. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the tutorial for the deck. Like I said, I will come back into this in a second, add a circle for the table, and we'll work on the umbrella table, get that done, and then we'll do another one. Maybe, I think I'll do a separate one for the chairs. That way each of those is a little more concise. But that's all the deck needs to be. We've got 2 feet high to the top, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, and the treads are a foot, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if you size it that way, and then if you want to put some deck material on it, you can go into the paint bucket, click on that, you'll get the materials pop up. Click on this list and choose wood. And you can just pick wood floor, whatever, put that on there, and just, if you click outside the shape, it puts it on the entire surface. If for some reason you do that, let's undo that. I'll right click, edit group. Okay, then I can click on these surfaces, but you can also see the function of this. Since every material in here is the same, if I open this group, I have to click on every single surface to apply that texture to it. And do you want to do that? I don't think so. I don't want to do it. So get outside the group, select the paint bucket, click on it once. Select the material first, click on it once, and it just colors the whole thing. We'll get into how you change these materials around. So if this is pointing the other direction, I don't really care for right now. We'll get into that on the next assignment. But just apply that material to it, and you're done. All right, I'm going to end this one here, and I will come back with the next tutorial, 4.1, and that will show you how to make the umbrella table, and 4.2 will be the chairs.